Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from participants from all over the world. We shall begin our webinar international series, Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 7, Goal 8, Goal 9, Goal 10, and Goal 17. That's conducted by the Faculty of Law, Universitas Internasional Batam. Once again, thank you for participate in this event. Then we welcome you all to follow this event until from 9 until about 12. Okay. Uh, for the first time, I shall give the session to Miss Rina Shahrullah, S8 MCL Ph.D. as the head of Master of Law of Universitas Internasional Batam. Times for you, Miss Rina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hendy Sama. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the webinar on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is the last series. Faculty of Law, Universitas Internasional Batam, has started the webinar on the SDGs since June 2020. The goals discussed today are Goal 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, Goal 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, Goal 9, Industry, Innovation, and Infrastructure, Goal 10, Reduce Inequalities, and Goal 17, Partnership for the Goals. The United Nations report that 13% of the global population still lacks access to modern electricity. This data inform us that the problems of getting access to electricity remains to exist. This condition is also experienced by the remote areas in the hinterland of Batam City. One of the remote villages that I and students of Master of Law program visited is Tanjung Kelingking. Up to the present, people still do not enjoy electricity supplied by the government. Hence, they have to rely on the generators donated by the corporations under their CSR program. This problem also occurs in many parts of the world. Goal 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, will be discussed by the speakers from China and Indonesia. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the employment in many countries. The International Labour Organization estimates that nearly half of the global workforce is at risk of losing their livelihoods because of the pandemic. At the local level, many workers in factories in Batam City have to lose their jobs as well. Goal 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, will be discussed by a speaker from Indonesia to give us insights and information regarding the problems of employment today. The United Nations reported that in 2018, 90% of people around the world could access the internet through a third generation or higher quality network. The technology, in particular, the use of internet, has become higher in demand during the COVID-19 pandemic. Goal 9 specifically focuses on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. The speakers from India and Indonesia will explain the goal and its implementation in their respective countries. Economic gaps have been wider since the COVID-19 pandemic has spread in every corner of the world. The hardest impact hit the poorest and most vulnerable communities. As I mentioned previously, the pandemic has also increased global unemployment. The United Nations reported that up to 30% of income inequality is due to inequality within households, including between women and men. Goal 10, Reduce Inequalities, will be discussed by the speakers from Ghana and Indonesia. The speakers will discuss how to find solutions to minimize the inequalities in their communities. The achievement of the SDGs would be impossible without strong partnership and cooperation at the global, regional, national, and local levels. Due to the conflict pandemic, strong partnership and cooperations are needed more than ever. All stakeholders should hand in hand to make effort to realize the SDGs and to ensure that the principle of leave no one behind can be realized by 2030. Goal 17, Partnership for the Goals, will be discussed by a speaker from Cameroon. Goal 17 will wrap up all the discussions on the Sustainable Development Goals today. I'm very sure that the presentation in this webinar will deepen our understanding regarding the implementation of Goal 7, 8, 9, 10, and 17. I would like to thank everyone who are now joining us in this webinar today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Andeskov is the project director at ZIZ for the BMW I-funded Sino-German Energy Transition Project. He's a non-resident fellow at Columbia University Center for Global Energy Policy. He has worked in Beijing since 2010 and has more than 20 years of public and private sector experience related to energy policy and markets. Okay, so time and so I shall give to Mr. Kov, please.
Okay, one correction. My name is Hove, Anders Hove, and yes, I'm very honored to be here at UIB speaking to all of you, and thank you very much for the invitation and for the introduction and especially the introduction of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm talking to you today from home, and I'm sorry to say that there is some renovation noise in the background, so I apologize for that. It's apparently some neighbor going through some renovation during the daytime here. The reason why I'm in China is precisely because I work on clean energy, and China is, in many respects, not all, a leader in clean energy. And I think that has continued during the whole time that I've lived here, 10 years. And I want to share with you a little bit about the overall situation of the clean energy worldwide. But first, I'm going to just show you briefly the overall situation of the Sustainable Development Goal number 7, as reported by the United Nations. I hope that everybody can see this slide here. And as was already mentioned, clean energy is very important because many people, of course, still lack electricity access. Many people have inadequate energy access around the world. And in addition, it's very important in less developed countries for clean energy to develop further, because oftentimes people in less developed communities are more exposed to the outside air, and the outside air is less healthy anyway. And cleaning up the energy system is a very important aspect of that. And so far, unfortunately, because clean energy got its start in the more developed countries, the more advanced economies, those were the countries that already had relatively clean air. And so by cleaning up further, they probably only made a small marginal improvement. Whereas now, with China and now India and many other countries moving much more quickly now in adopting renewable energy for electricity, but also outside the electricity sector, you see that there's a much greater potential to improve air quality and to reduce or scale back or shut down outdated, inefficient, highly polluting facilities that are also coincidentally the worst facilities in terms of global warming, which is a global challenge confronting all of us. Renewable energy also historically has been more expensive than traditional energy, but that's changing quite rapidly. And I think that for the entire time I've worked in the field of energy, basically, it's always been known that solar and wind energy are falling in cost year after year, and energy storage as well, a critically enabling factor for clean energy, falling in cost year after year. But always renewable energy was more expensive than conventional energy, and that limited its application, obviously, especially in poorer areas. And the problem is that we can all know that it's falling in price, but because in different regions of the world it might become competitive at different times, there's no one point worldwide when it becomes cheaper, and therefore many policymakers, many local people, many regular people will not necessarily be, let's say, notified or made aware when clean energy does reach that tipping point of being more economical. And I believe especially in some of the most remote areas, such as islands or places that are far away from major populated areas, these are the places where it is actually competitive, where it makes economic sense to adopt clean energy, but where it's most difficult for people to obtain access to clean energy because of both awareness, capacity building, and also because of policy. So that's my introductory comments, and now I'm going to go on and discuss the overall situation of clean energy worldwide. This is my overall agenda, so worldwide status of renewables, and then I'm going to focus in on wind and solar, and then I'm going to discuss the main emerging technologies which I think have the greatest potential to, let's say, develop in the next 5 years. This is a report, the Renewables 21 Global Status Report, which I strongly recommend. It's been coming out every year for a number of years, and it really provides a great overview of the overall situation of all forms of renewables and basically all forms of low carbon energy. And you can see here the overall situation of clean energy within the total primary energy use is still quite small. So it's about 20% renewable energy in the overall global energy picture. And this does break down between nuclear energy, traditional biomass, and what REN 21 calls modern renewables. And generally those modern renewables are the type of renewable energies that are likely to be scaled up in the future most rapidly. And those renewables, the modern renewables here, you can see it's just 11%, and that's fairly small change from the 9.6% in 2013. And because we in the renewable sector do typically focus on wind and solar as the most rapidly growing, some of you may be surprised to see that hydropower and biomass are the largest here, and that wind and solar here are just 2.1% of the total 1%. So only 1/5 of the modern renewables is coming from those wind and solar, which have been around for quite some time, but still struggling to gain a very large market share in overall energy production. Now, to understand why that is, it's important to look at each sector individually, and I'm not going to go through all of the sectors. I'm only going to talk about the power sector today. You can see here that the modern renewables have the largest slice of the power sector, but most of our energy is used for thermal energy, and that's obviously energy that's going both into heating as well as going into industrial production, so steam heating for industrial processes, for example. In addition, transport is a major consumer of energy, and there you can see that basically renewable energy is providing quite a small portion of that as well. So it's mainly in the power sector where renewable energies have taken off in the past 2 decades. Now this shows the overall situation of those modern renewables and where you're seeing the most rapid growth. And clearly here, in terms of capacity, which is typically measured in megawatts or gigawatts, what you're seeing here is that solar has gone from being roughly even in terms of additions to wind and hydro to being much larger in terms of annual additions. So basically, and here you see on this chart that over 200 gigawatts of solar were added worldwide in 2019. That's a tremendous amount of additions. However, it's important to note that these solar plants do only operate when the sun is shining, so each gigawatt or megawatt of solar is not necessarily producing as much energy as if, for example, you installed more hydroelectric or more nuclear. Now here's a breakdown within the electric power sector, and you can see here what I was talking about earlier that renewable electricity makes up 27% of electricity, so far higher than the percentage of overall energy consumption. And then within that, hydropower is very dominant among all the renewables. So 16% of total electricity production globally from hydropower. And China is far and away the leader in total hydropower capacity. Other countries with major hydropower as a share of world energy production would include countries like Brazil, the United States, European Union, not too shabby in this category either. And some countries, of course, have almost no hydropower resources. And some countries that are least developed countries or developing countries may actually be able to provide a very large fraction of their energy from hydropower. It's very dependent on the resources locally. And unfortunately, the worldwide situation for hydropower, and this is all I'm going to say about hydropower, is that it's not growing quickly anymore because most of the available resources have been exploited already. And in fact, additional dams in many parts of the world are quite controversial because of their impacts on biodiversity and land use and overall living of nearby people, and downstream impacts that they can have, especially in regions like Southeast Asia where there are cross-border impacts. So in this table, basically wind power and solar power are seeing rapid growth, as I mentioned several times, but they're also seeing rapid growth in their share. And wind power, of course, 6% now. That's up from just 4% only a few years ago. Solar power now just 3%, but that's up from 1% just a few years ago. So these are changing most in percentage terms. Now, one of the reasons for that is that these technologies are fairly well developed, but also because countries and policymakers have been taking action within the power sector, probably because the technologies are now available. And you do see that in terms of promoting renewables or clean energy in the other sectors, transport and then especially the heating and cooling policies are falling behind. So basically, it's a symbiotic relationship between the realistic technology availability and then also the willingness of policymakers to tackle that. So the majority of countries now have policies that are promoting renewables in the power sector. And here's a map of some of those, especially those that are not just promoting renewables, but are specifically targeting to have a very high percentage of renewables in their energy mix or in their electricity mix. And you can see that European Union is very aggressive on this, as well as some other European countries, Brazil, India, Southeast Asia. Some of the countries that do have very positive renewable energy targets, such as China, currently are not on this map. And then other countries with very large renewable energy production, like Australia or the United States, are not on this map simply because they don't have those long-term targets. So this is only a map of that one factor, the long-term target for high percentage of renewables. Yeah, I already mentioned that hydropower are very stable because of the lack of resources. So now I'm just going to dive into wind market. And the wind market has been very interesting. It's grown from quite small to quite large, but I would have to say that over the past 5 years, the global wind energy market has been approximately stable, and a large fraction of wind installations have been taking place in China. Fewer wind installations have been taking place in recent years in the European Union, and the United States also fairly stable in terms of annual installation numbers. So what you see is that the wind market is growing very much in absolute terms, but not in terms of the annual growth rate of installations is more or less stable. Here, what you can see is that earlier in the decade, there was almost no offshore wind, but now you are seeing some offshore wind coming in, and now accounting for 10% of all newly installed wind energy capacity. This is, of course, because with more experience and more companies involved, the cost of offshore wind, which used to be something like 3 or 4 times greater than regular onshore wind, the cost is now comparable for the large offshore wind parks. Unfortunately, in terms of energy access, offshore wind is still a very capital-intensive program, and it requires generally very large plants. So this would require extremely large energy companies to be involved, and it would definitely require national government policy support. And in many cases, it may also require some international cooperation because of use of offshore resources in areas where multiple nations have territorial claims. And that's definitely true in European Union. I think it's a good example of that, where you see basically countries cooperating to use the North Sea as a major energy base, which it had been already in oil production, but now is likely to transition to also wind energy production. And here you see the growth rates of wind, both onshore and offshore, in terms of the very long term, going out to 2050. And I think that these estimates are perhaps somewhat conservative because they don't take into account some of the goals for 2050 that have been recently announced by China and Japan and other countries. However, you can see here that if you think back to our chart that we saw 6% of energy from wind. If you look at this graph, you can see that that fraction could grow quite strongly to, let's say, 20-30% by 2050 if all these installations on the graph at left take place. So 5 total terawatts, 5,000 gigawatts by 2050. And then for offshore, you can see that the growth rate is much faster, but it would still reach only about 1/5 of the total wind energy production by 2050. If this forecast is correct, which of course the forecast for 30 years out, not necessarily accurate. And these are the numbers behind that. In terms of the installation rates, you will see that expectations are that wind will grow quite strongly, and especially offshore wind will go quite strongly. But since these projections don't include those long-term 2050 carbon neutral goals, they do show sort of a leveling off after 2035 or so. And I think in actuality, it will just continue growing. And here's, again, about the cost. And I think when we're talking about the SDGs, we really want to narrow in on the cost because clean energy has to be economically viable in all countries, not just in wealthy countries. And what you can see here is that in terms of the price of wind power versus fossil energy, wind power is being bid into auctions for future years is now below the range of estimated fossil fuel plants in a wide variety of countries. This is not just one country. This is the data from IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency. And then that's also true for offshore wind. You can see the graph at right showing that offshore wind now coming into line as sort of in the middle of the prices for fossil energy. And I think that this trend is just going to continue. What you can also see is that the investment in wind has been growing, but it's also relatively constant, and that's because of these the falling cost of wind. Constant investment amounts is not necessarily a problem because the energy is getting cheaper, so the efficiency of each dollar of investment is greater. Okay, and the other thing that's helped reduce the cost is that the technology has been getting better and the planning of wind has been getting better so that each wind turbine that's installed typically is operating more hours of the year and not spending so much time idle in poor wind conditions. Wind technology now, you can operate in lower wind conditions, and you can also reach greater heights, which means that you can turn the turbine faster and more reliably. This just shows the regional dispersion of installations that are expected, and basically Asia, as is also true for solar, is expected to really dominate future wind installations, but North America and Europe are not too shabby either. Just a little bit about a few emerging wind technologies, and for each of these technologies, I would say that they are important, but they're not necessarily on track to become the dominant technology. The first one is the pairing of wind with other energy sources, especially with other renewable energy sources and with energy storage. Once you combine wind with solar or wind with hydro, typically you're able to not just create more energy, more clean energy, but the main purpose of doing that is to ensure that you have a higher return on your investment because the entire system is operating at a higher capacity factor. And most of the countries that have already developed strong experience in wind and solar are now pairing their plants together when they organize auctions, when they develop supporting policies, when they design zones for prioritizing development of wind and solar. They typically account for the possibility that these might be located together so that they can produce energy together at a higher capacity factor. And you see that especially in India now, which has excellent wind and solar resources, where you're seeing more auctions that are pairing the two technologies instead of trying to promote each technology separately. Also, a hot topic in this field is hydrogen. We do know that from earlier in the presentation, you saw that industry is going to be very challenging because industry relies on not just heat, but especially on very high temperature heat for industrial processes. And so one potential solution for that is hydrogen. Instead of using fossil fuels, instead of using coal or gas, hydrogen is very viable potentially if it can be scaled up. And probably the way it would be scaled up is by developing wind in certain energy bases, either within a country or within a region, using that wind for electrolysis of water and then shipping the hydrogen directly to where it is going to be used. Could be shipped via ship, could be shipped via pipeline. It's sometimes people do get the impression or give the impression that hydrogen production will just be produced when the energy is not otherwise needed. I don't think that's the case. I think that these will be dedicated wind and solar plants that are just producing hydrogen for industrial use. Right now, it's not economical yet. It needs to come down significantly in cost, but based on the projects that are going in, I think that the scaling up will reduce the cost quite significantly, even though you will hear some people say the technology is already mature. The higher height of wind turbines and also the larger size of wind turbines means that faster winds and offshore sites can be exploited more effectively. And this is really important for those offshore, especially far offshore wind sites, where you could imagine a lot of the energy coming in the future. You could imagine power plants like this operating with 60% capacity factor instead of 20% that we experienced 20 years ago. So floating turbines, of course, is sort of the most anticipated technology for wind, because this is where you get very far offshore, where you get very high winds, very reliable winds, and also you can use very high wind turbines without disturbing the view or disturbing local residents. And you can see that Europe has 45 megawatts, so that's very small. Not it's far smaller than a gigawatt, but it's going to be like doubling at some point in the near future. Moving quickly to solar, I think solar has been a technology that many people believed would become dominant, but also it had been, for most of the time I've been working in energy, seen as the most expensive and almost like a deluxe or luxury product. And I think that was always reflected when the international forecasts, such as from BP or the International Energy Agency, they would always assume that the solar installation rate, which the world was experiencing at that time, would just continue on into the future because the technology was not economical in most areas. And indeed, even though the cost was coming down, it always seemed like there was a potential when costs would stop falling, and the cost declines might stop before the technology became economical worldwide. And that changed this year. So the international agencies recently released World Energy Outlook says that solar will become the new king of electricity and will be the cheapest source of electricity in history. And as a result, they changed their forecasts so that instead of, as you can see, the horizontal lines here, which were prior year forecasts from their reports, where they just expected annual installations to stay flat each year, now you see that they are anticipating a rising amount of solar installations each year going on to 2040. And that's very important because that will help the share of solar rise much more quickly than they had expected before. The statement about the cost is really important for the SDGs because solar, unlike wind, which we talked about just now, unlike hydro, solar is the best resource for distributed energy. It's an excellent resource for remote areas, for islands, and for poorer areas where it's not necessary, it's not necessarily needed for, say, a village to have electricity 24/7. It's not necessarily required for a village to have a very high capacity connection to the national grid. In many areas, it would be sufficient to have electricity for part of the day to charge up phones, to operate lighting, and this sort of thing, as opposed to what we would expect in major world cities or developed countries. So this technology becoming economical is a game changer for the SDGs. And this is just a forecast then of the total installed capacity for solar. And you can see that the expectation for 2050 that IRENA has is much larger than for wind. And it's also much larger growth than you would see for wind. And that is precisely because of this improving economics of solar. So reaching 8,500 gigawatts by 2050 from about 700 or 800 gigawatts right now, so a factor of 10. And so you saw earlier that solar right now is about 3% of world energy production. So you could expect that if this forecast was achieved, it would be at least 25% of world electricity production in 2050. And I think that this, again, this forecast is likely conservative. Again, this forecast does assume that the existing policies remain in place, but it does not necessarily include that factor of the zero carbon or carbon neutral goals of China and India or Japan. So that's why this sort of flattens off in the later years, and I think it'll continue growing in those later years. Again, most of the installations be in Asia, followed by North America, then Europe, then Africa and Middle East, then Latin America, then Australia and Oceania. And you can see here that solar initially had been very much dominated by Germany and the United States 10 years ago. Those were the dominant countries. And now it's really, the annual installations are really spread out much more widely. And this is the total installed capacity. If you looked at the annual installations, it would be even more spread out in terms of what's going on today. And here you see the similar graph from IRENA showing the cost decline. Again, this is based on auction data for utility scale plants. The information about distributed solar would be similar, although the prices for distributed solar would be slightly higher. But you can see here again that the price of solar is at the bottom of the range of what fossil fuels offer. And this is worldwide data, not in a specific country. Talking about new solar technologies, now that there are billions of dollars going into solar, of course, there are new technologies coming along. And it's nice to see that some of those technologies are not just coming along, but they really are reaching the market. And in terms of where those technologies are at, the most important technologies that have reached the market in the past few years are changed chemistry for the way that solar panels are made. So moving from multicrystalline to monocrystalline, which has really increased the efficiency of solar cells, as well as the introduction of bifacial solar cells, so that enables the solar cells to collect energy from both sides. Seems not important since the sun only shines in one direction. However, solar cells can actually get a considerable boost just from the reflected light from the ground or nearby structures, and that increases their output and in turn reduces their cost. Because they have more output per unit. Some other technologies that are really more in the experimental stage or in the early stage, but I think are quite promising. These are the idea of glass modules, so they're not installed on a metal substrate, but rather that there's glass on both sides. In addition, there are various thin film technologies that either have been around for a while. That's cadmium telluride showed as having market penetration in the top part of the graph, as well as emerging technologies, thin film technologies, perovskite materials, which could be deposited on any surfaces. And it could even be just a liquid that you pour onto a surface, like pouring onto your house, connect a wire, and you've got electricity instead of having to install a solar panel. That's sort of a science fiction idea right now. It's not something you're going to see in a product, but it's something that's fun to think about, and it's definitely something that people are working on. Probably perovskites, their biggest potential advantage is that they're very low cost, they're potentially very high efficiency, but maybe their best their best hope is to actually be a coating on top of other solar panels, so that they can be a tandem, what's called a tandem solar cell that has an even higher efficiency in terms of converting sunlight into electricity, and that would enable existing solar panels to potentially be upgraded without building a new solar plant. So that could be very exciting. Storage is very important for solar. Typically, solar plants produce power at most about 25% of the time, which seems paradoxical because it's daylight about a third of the time or half the time. But of course, the sun is not shining high in the sky all time, and it's often cloudy in most regions for part of the year. So storage is very important to have. And typically, when people who don't know this industry think about solar storage, they imagine producing all of their electricity from solar and then storing all of it in a huge battery so you could have power, flat power 24/7. That's not really what's needed. What's really needed is that, solar only providing about 3% of electricity, you only need to store a little bit of the solar so that you can use it in the peak period. So typically a solar plant would install storage for about 2 hours of storage. In other words, 2 hours of energy production at the peak period of sunlight could be stored for later that day, such as in the evening, or for the next day if it was cloudy the next day. And that's sufficient to provide the grid or to provide local users the electricity they need when they need it. Basically, this is what's needed for reliability, not huge batteries that store all the energy that's going into the solar. And basically, you see that energy storage prices have fallen much more rapidly than solar prices ever did, and so that makes it almost inevitable that solar plus storage will be economical worldwide in the near future if the present cost declines continue, which we believe that they will. Putting solar on rooftops is something that people have talked about for a long time. Of course, it's happened for a long time, but it's always been a very small market. And this is very interesting to me because it seems very obvious that solar has advantages on site, and many people in remote villages, of course, already have this. But the question is, why doesn't it happen more than it does? And the main reason is that essentially you need to have policies that support this. You need to have policies that overcome the barriers to distributed energy, or else it's very difficult to happen. Because why? Because typically buildings are owned by somebody else than the occupant or the user. Maybe the users are short-term users. They don't have any incentive to install the solar. So I think in the future, as solar continues to come down in cost, basically what we're going to see is more governments acting to resolve some of those barriers, and even putting in requirements that new buildings have solar installed, because that's just a cheaper way for them to get energy. And unless you make that a requirement, it'll be more expensive to install solar later. Also, it'd be useful to have large flat buildings, such as industrial warehouses, be converted so that their rooftops have solar. And here you see solar on the rooftops, but also so that our streets and parking lots, which are really underutilized in terms of the people or output per square meter, so those can also be covered with solar, and you get shading for your car, you get shading for the streets, or you get shading for the empty space, plus you get energy production as an added value. The final point, which is incredibly important for the SDGs, and it really overlaps with a lot of the other SDGs, is integrating solar with agriculture. And I think a lot of people would say right now that most solar is in desert areas. It's very large solar plants in remote wastelands or desert areas. And that's going to start changing now that it's known that you can install solar on top of regular agricultural fields. And this results in more agricultural production because you get lower evaporation, you get more shading during the hottest days, and you also help promote pollination of plants, because there are certain pollinators that congregate in these shady areas under the solar panels. So you see in Germany and the United States a lot of experiments being done in this area. And that also will bring the solar panels closer to the users, so that they don't have to have so many transmission lines installed. Finally, floating solar, probably particularly relevant in countries that have a lot of islands and a lot of seacoast, I think that right now floating solar is mainly used in areas where there are lakes or there are sewage treatment facilities, but as the cost of this comes down and the experience goes up, we're going to see gigawatt scale solar on the oceans. Even in areas that have very rough seas, it's potentially feasible. And that's excellent because the cooling of the water actually increases the output of the solar panels. And when you pair these panels with hydro, you also see that the evaporation reduction due to shading results in more hydropower output. So there's just a lot of synergies there. Okay, so generally I would say for renewable energy, we're moving, we have a few different trends. In the wind sector, we're moving from just onshore to more offshore. We're moving from standalone plants to more integrated plants with other technologies such as energy storage and solar. And in the solar field, we're moving from these very remote, large plants, which I call extensive, to more intensive uses of solar, where it's combined with land that is used for agriculture, or land that is used for parking, or land that is used for buildings. We're moving from standalone to integrated, and we are going to move to a place where solar is essentially ubiquitous in every area of the world because it is becoming so cheap, especially now that energy storage is available. So I'll stop there, and if there are any questions, happy to answer. Yeah, I do see there are a few questions on the board, so maybe I can tackle a couple of them. In terms of nuclear, of course, nuclear technology has been around since the 1940s, 1950s, and in the 1950s, it was believed that nuclear energy would definitely be the cheapest source of energy for the world, and also in the 1980s, there was a lot of hope that there could be nuclear fusion, so very advanced nuclear technologies. But a lot of this research essentially stopped in the 1980s after the very famous nuclear disasters in the Soviet Union and the United States. And then things were starting to accelerate a little bit in the 90s. At that point, however, the technology had changed, the regulatory environment in the 1990s had changed, and most countries that had already adopted nuclear, such as in Europe or North America, or in Japan or Korea, they found that nuclear energy had become too expensive to be practical and too time-consuming. Typically, nuclear plants would take at least 10 years to construct, and more practically, 20 years is a reasonable estimate. So there's one new nuclear plant that has been built in Europe in the last 2 decades, and it has been under construction the whole period when I have been researching energy. So basically, from the early 2000s till now, that plant is still under construction. Now, China has built plants more quickly, but even China is finding this as well, where these plants are much more expensive than any other form of electricity, whether you consider from the cost of construction or the cost of the final energy output. And in addition, siting them is extremely difficult. They can only be sited near water bodies, and those bodies are typically the most heavily populated, the most ecologically sensitive. Often those areas may be seismically sensitive or exposed to tsunamis, as we saw in Japan. And basically, this is only showed a trend of slowing down rather than accelerating. And there are, of course, always exciting new technologies in this field. However, all those technologies are at least 10 years away from deployment, and the commercial viability of those technologies is difficult or impossible to reliably estimate or convincingly estimate. Whereas in contrast, if you want to build a solar plant, you can put that in, 6 months later, you have energy. You pair it with batteries, 3 months later, you have energy storage. These technologies, renewable technologies, are faster, cheaper. They are variable sources of energy, so they don't produce power 24/7, but they're so much cheaper, they're so much faster that disadvantage goes away. Is there anything that Indonesia can adopt? I'm not an expert on Indonesia. I'm so reluctant to say anything for fear of not saying something correct. But as I hinted several points about technologies that are highly relevant for remote areas, for islands, for places where the only alternative might be, for example, importing diesel energy. I recently, just so that I cannot make a mistake about Indonesia, I'll mention something about the Caribbean, which is also an area with many different islands and many obstacles to energy access in the Caribbean, and also many natural disasters like hurricanes. And I was visiting the Caribbean. Since I'm an American, it's close for me. And I visited several islands in the Caribbean a few years ago. And I visited one island where there was a lot of rooftop solar just for regular people, as well as larger scale utility solar. And people were very supportive. And then I visited a neighboring island where basically I asked people why they didn't have solar there. And basically they said that it wasn't good in their climate or something. And basically suggested to me that it was a matter of lack of capacity, that the market hadn't reached there, the companies had not reached that island. And just 10 kilometers away from where I was seeing no solar, there was another island that had all of its electricity provided by solar, and even a very small and very undeveloped island, not sort of a rich country tourist destination island. And it was in the news recently because the entire Caribbean was devastated by several huge hurricanes a couple years ago, and the island that had solar was the one island that was able to have reliable energy the next day, whereas those that had relied on the power grid or were relying on oil imports, those islands were experiencing disruptions. And in terms of international cooperation, it's very clear that the advance of technologies has been really important for adopting these clean energy technologies. The fact that the technologies have been scaled up manufacturing in Asia has brought those prices down. The fact that companies can collaborate and build and own and do capacity building in countries with renewable energy. I think that the potential for cooperation in clean energy is so much greater than in the fossil fuels, because there's no benefit to sort of like, if you imagine with an oil field or an oil pipeline, there's no need to control a lot of land. You don't have any trade choke points where there's any energy security implication, so that you don't feel this anxiety. Even a small country that's reliant on imports will not feel such anxiety, because they always know that once they have the clean energy installed, it's local, it's producing electricity for them, and it's going to work. And you're not going to ever be cut off from that, because all your energy is coming from your own country anyway. Whereas with oil and gas, that usually will never be true. And yes, you might have to import those batteries, but that's not necessarily going to cause a problem, because any disruption to the supply chain would take place over the course of years, as opposed to being something where the supplier in another country could just turn off the pipeline and the next day you have a shortage and a humanitarian disaster. So, okay, I'll stop.
Okay. So Miss Stivani is Ayuning Suwarlan STMT is the head of architecture program of Universitas International Batam. She's also a master's degree of urban design architecture from Institut Teknologi 10 November. She's urban planner expert of document development for Batam City Control 2020. So the time is yours, Miss Stivani.
Hello everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'm glad for joining today's international webinar. And today my presentation is about affordable and clean energy SDGs Goal 7. I would like to show you about Indonesia's energy outlook. Actually, this data is come from BPPT about energy consumption in Indonesia. The total final energy consumptions in Indonesia in 2018 is around 875 barrel of oil equivalents. The share of final energy consumptions per type is still dominated by fuel, gasoline, kerosene, after, F-gas, diesel, and etc. So it's around 39% of Indonesians people use full energy for the consumption. The amount of fuel consumption is because the use of fuel equipment is still more efficient than others, particularly in the transportation sectors. The highest one is fuel consumption, but Indonesia have the second highest one is electric is electricity, around 18%. Okay, next is the energy consumptions in Indonesia by sectors. Actually, we have some sectors in Indonesia such as industry, household, transportations, commercials, and others. The transportation sectors is the largest energy users compared to other sectors. The energy used in the transportation sectors is almost entirely useful, especially gasoline. From the diagram, we could see that 40% of Indonesians' consumptions is transportation of gasoline or fuel. And the other sectors is industrial, use a lot of coal and electricity because almost of boiler technology in industry requires coal as a material burns and electricity. Most of the daily activity like household sectors are supported by energy electricity, and for the commercial sectors, energy use electricity is dominates more than others energy. So activities in other sector which includes agriculture, constructions, mining use a lot of diesel. From the diagram, we could see that around 38% of sectors use electricity energy in Indonesia. And for the details, highest sectoral and electricity consumptions in Indonesia is household sectors. Almost 50% use electricity, and the rest is LPG and others. And commercial sectors. This is the highest sector using electricity, almost around 80%. And the others is diesel and another energy. So the uses of electricity in Indonesia is very large scale. Now, in line with the economic and population growth, as well an increase in the target electrification ratio to 100% by 2025, then the demand for electricity is projected to increase by an average growth of 5.9% per annum to 1,455 terawatt hours in 2050. Meanwhile, electricity production will be grown to 600 terawatt hours by 2050. From the figure, we could see that our positions, Indonesia's positions in 2020 is 295. So, around 30 years, we have to produce electricity energy around 1,600. So it means that around 50 years, the electricity productions could have increased about 500%. So it's a very large amount of electricity produced, 500%. Now, what is the problem? The first problem about the uses of electricity is greenhouse gas emission. Greenhouse gas emissions in 2050 are estimated at 1,904 carbon dioxide equivalents. The electricity sector is the biggest emitter because of electricity needs is increasing more rapidly than its kinds other energy. And as we know that greenhouse gas emissions makes global warming in our world and also in Indonesia actually. So what is the solution? Because I'm from architecture, so I will give some solutions about architectural science. Actually, architecture has a lot of solutions for global warming or gas emission reduce. As we know, maybe you heard about green architecture, greenhouse, green buildings, or sustainable development. There is some of solution to share for all of us about reducing gas emission. But today, I would like to share to participants two easiest ways for implementation in our life, in our home. The first is about lighting, and the second one is about thermal systems. The use of natural lighting and ventilation and natural ventilation will form the perception of a wide space, cool and reduce energy consumption. The ideal air temperature that is comfortable for human is around 24 until 26 Celsius. Meanwhile, the ideal healthy humidity is 50 until 60%. The temperature in the space can rise due to the physical condition of the buildings and activity of the occupants. Sun exposure during the day, cooking, computer activities, smoking, and etc. are the causes of rising air temperature in the house, or our room, or our building. Without proper ventilation planning, the increase in air temperature can cause disturbing comfort. So, how to have a thermal comfort from natural ventilation? With natural ventilation, space have more energy efficiency because there is no need to use an artificial ventilation system. Artificial ventilation system such as air conditioners, exhaust fans, and other electrical system, which is still dominantly using a lot of electrical energy. The essence of good natural ventilation is air circulation or air movement. Air circulations can occur when there are openings that allow air to enter and leave the building. The openings could be windows, woven roster, holes in the wall, and etc. So, what is the ways to have thermal comfort using natural ventilation? Use cross ventilation for our building. What is cross ventilation? Cross ventilation is the placement of opening in opposite houses should be not placed close together or parallel, so that the passing winds does not come out immediately but can reach through the entire room first. So let's see the figure one. The figure one is using straight ventilation, so the air come inside the room and straight go outside without any air have circulates of movement in our room. But in figure 2, we could see there is cross ventilations anyway. The air come inside the rooms and have some circulation and movement, then go outside. The movement or decirculation in our rooms makes the rooms cool and fresh without any air conditioner or any fans or exhausted fans uses electricity. The placement in cross ventilations can be more optimal for air movement and circulation in space. So this is the one ways to reduce our electricity uses. We can use cross ventilation in our home, in our office, so we can turn off our air conditioner, but we still have cool air and fresh air in our room. So the second one is about lighting comfort using natural light. What is the system? We could have light self system. Light self system can help illuminate the rooms with natural light so that it can reduce the use of light and can save electrical energy. In addition, it can also help reduce glare that is found in the room. lighting comfort in light cells designed to capture sunlight and transmit it to a deeper room. And the result is deeper penetration or deeper transportation, this transfer and lighting balance that using just a normal window. If we see the figure in the slide, we can see that one is window with no light self and the others is model with light self. The window without light self have sunlight straight to the rooms and only lighting the straightways. But if we use light self, the light self will be reflect the sunlight to the ceiling first, and then will transfer the light of the sunlight to entire rooms. So we can have a bright room to our whole rooms without any lamp or electricity. In another advantage, that is able to cover direct light shade so that it reduce glares also. So from light self, if we have uncomfortable with sunlight, we can use this light self to reduce the glare. But actually, light self is work best in sunny conditions, and this is the problem also about light self, that if we have in cloudy, it cannot work efficiently, but if in sunny condition, it will work very well. Okay, light self is designed to have transparent property and a clean surface that light can be easily reflect into the room. Actually, almost light self is shaped rectangular mold and hanging in the windows. And material use of light self is polycarbonate with contain a mixture of chlorine and water. The mixtures of chlorine and water, because this combining chemical has high reflexivity for lighting. In addition, the mixture of chlorine and water is not specular, so that it does not causes glare, and light is not concentrated in a single central point on the ceiling of the room. So, because of the chlorine and the water mixture, the light from the sunlight will not capture in one point, but can reflect well to around of our entire room. And the total reflectivity produced by the light self is about 95% with the light transmittance of 90%. About 80%. The lumen output produced during clear sky condition is 2,300 lumens, equivalent to 53 watt. So quite high for the reflections and for the lumens equivalent if we use this light self. The important things to use light self is the angle of the light self itself. From the figures, we could see three angles, 0, 10 degrees, and 33 degrees. Which angle have different reflections of the sunlight. We can use any degrees that we need for our rooms, but I think the best way is if we use 33 degrees because it can reflect the lighting of the sunlight very well and can transfer the light inside our rooms. Okay, the conclusion is the high consumption of electricity can have an impact on global warming. Therefore, it is necessary to apply natural energy to buildings so that the use of electrical energy can be reduced. The use of natural ventilation and natural lighting through the cross-ventilation systems and light cells can create a cool, healthy, and evenly lit room conditions, so as to create comfort space and save the use of electrical energy. Natural ventilation through cross-ventilation allows the movement of air entering the building to flow out properly without any trapped air, so that the rooms become cool without any air conditioning and has a room with healthy air quality. LED cells can reflect sunlight from outside to the ceiling, so that light can enter into a deeper room and can illuminate a wider room. The room will be bright without need for the use of lights or electrical lamp, and thus saving electricity usage in our home or in our life. Well, that is my presentations, and we continue to Q&A. I have three questions from these questions. First one is there a solution to source of energy in Indonesia? Okay. As you know, Indonesia is only familiar with not renewable source because we use it for a very long time. Okay. Actually, that's true. Indonesia only use some of energy that non-renewable, such as fuel, gasoline, after and diesel, and some kinds others. But we can know about solar panels for renewable source of energy. Actually, solar panels is not new, but for Indonesians society, it's just a little people use solar panel in their life or in their home or in their building. Solar panels or solar energy begin with the sun, also known as PV panel, are used to convert light from the sun, which is composed from a particle of energy called photons, into electricity that can be used to power electrical loads. Actually, these solar panels have been shared from Mr. Hove before. He explains very well about solar panel systems, and this can become renewable resource for Indonesia. And the second one is biomass. Maybe most of us have heard about biomass. Biomass is organic, meaning it is made from materials that come from living organisms, such as plants and animals. The most common biomass material is used for energy, plants, wood, and waste. Biomass is very versatile materials and can be used to produce heat, electricity, and even a liquid fuel like biodiesel. And talk about the cost. Okay. Actually, if we put something, we almost need a cost. But let me think positively, because to start a new project, we really need to build a system for the project to run. For example, energy for biomass. We need to create a waste storage systems, waste filtering system, processing systems until collect the result. If we don't build the system, the process won't work. So, cost is our investment for our future. And the last questions asked about my expertise as an architecture department. Could you tell more about greenhouse effect and the solution? Actually, the greenhouse effect adopts its name from the analogy of one building named greenhouse building. which is a house or building that have a system to keep the building temperature warm due to the sunlight. Then it's a top with the head that the atmosphere receives so that keep the earth warm called greenhouse effect. Now, the problem is because of human activity. However, burning fossil, cutting forests, using high electricity, high full of energy, it causes the temperature reserve in the atmosphere to be very high so that the temperature reserve in the earth is getting hotter. The hotter, which is called global warming as we know. What is it causing? The global warming causing drought, flammable forests, and the polar ice could be melting, and it even can change the climate. Climate changing is very great impact in agriculture sectors, and it could be shortage of food service in Indonesia or around of the world because agriculture serves us about foods and beverages also. So the solutions is, like I said before, reduce energy which causes gas emissions. Use natural energies such as sunlight or winds or air in our environment. The sun heat can be used as a substitute for electricity with a solar system, and also cross ventilation to minimize the use of air conditioning. The use of LED bulb to minimize using of electrical lamp, and we can use cross ventilation so we can minimize the uses of air conditioning. So do whatever we can do to reduce the pressure on our atmosphere for the emission of greenhouse gases. If we can together do the reducing of electricity or energy consumption in Indonesia, actually Indonesia no more needs to produce 500% in 20 and 50 about electricity, and we can reduce global warming and gas emissions actually. Well, that's for me. Thank you for the times, and I would like to take over to the panelists. Thank you.
Roro, Mega, Cahyaning, Azmi, Riyandani. He's student of Bachelor of Management program of Universitas International Batam. She has also become a third winner of International Startup for Business Computation, social responsibility on 2020. Okay, time is yours, Miss Roro, please.
Well, hello. Hello, everyone, and rebel to all panel speakers and audiences. And today's topic is the quality of digital workforce for enhancing inclusive and sustainable economic growth. So here I am, choose the topic Goal 8 of Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, waiting for the share screen. All right, thank you. So why I'm being so excited with this goal? Because now I'm doing some works, businesses, and projects that focus on this field and also linked into economic growth. So next, before it, I'm Roro, 20 years old, international business management student, doing some business works and projects that focus on education, empowerment, and sociopreneurship. And this is the quick overview about what I'm doing and why I'm so concerned with this goal. Next, since the start of COVID-19 pandemic, the International Labour Organization notes that more than 1 in 6 young people have lost their job, totally 400 million job losses in second quarter of 2020. This is incredibly crazy because the world's youth population, the productive ages, is 1.21 billion or over 15% of the global population. The Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 8, focus on promoting sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth and full and productive employment and decent work for all, should do something for it. So, next, in this goal, we talk about highlight some key points for increasing the problem solver of these issues. So in goal 8, I keep highlighting for these 4 points. First one is 8.2, that target that diversify, innovate, and upgrade for economic productivity. 8.3, promoting development-oriented policies to support job creation and growing enterprises. Then 8.5, achieving full and productive employment and decent work for all equally. Then the last one is 8.6, increasing proportion of employment, education, or training the youths. Next, in some countries, there are many programs that support to achieve this goal better. One of them is the youth guarantee that help better young people for the labor market and build relevant skills. Next slide. Next. Okay, so the next one is Youth Employment Initiative. So these programs provide apprenticeship, traineeships, and job placement for young people who are not in education, employment, or training. Then, realizing the importance of economic empowerment to achieve sustainable development goals, the United Nations has been increasingly focusing on entrepreneurial interventions to support ambitious youth to start their own businesses and generate employment opportunities for themselves and others. Entrepreneurship has also been shown to contribute to advancing social and environmentally sustainable development areas. Next, with positive impacts in the areas of financial inclusion, empowerment of women, sustainable farming, and minority integration, among many others. Next slide. Thank you. The Entercom creates a shared understanding of the knowledge, skills, and attitudes for bridging the worlds of education and work. Because we know how huge the gap between education system with the industry actually needs. We should take experiences while we're going to work because we need to practice it, right? So the framework research these 4 goals. First one is new digital skill for work field. Then accessible digital training and workshop. Effective integrated digital job placement and support for entrepreneurship financially build capacity and increase knowledge. So, how about Indonesian millennials? Do we contribute in advancing Sustainable Development Goals 8? Okay, absolutely yes, we contribute with some points. Based on data, Indonesian millennials is highly technology based. Next. Next slide. Next one. Okay. Based on this data, we know that imagine 79% of them consume digital when they just awake till asleep every single day. Indonesian millennials also known as highly technology based because they even search for the latest news through digital media, as 70.4% of them prefer digital media for its easy access, ability to multitask, and speed of delivering the latest news. Then the second one is they are innovative towards entrepreneurship. Surveys of that show 69.1% of Indonesian millennials were interested to start their own businesses. Many digital businesses that focus on improving human resource quality that is built by Indonesian millennials. I'll show you later. Then, Indonesian millennials are also optimistic about diversity and seeking better self-development opportunities with the first recent millennials to quit the company because they are aware that personal growth is more than important to deserve and support the economic growth. These are some lists of digital business that improve. Next, these are some lists of digital business that improve the human resource quality for achieving sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent for all. This is just some of this. There are a lot of more than this, but one of them is what I do with my team. There are also UIB students, and our project, our businesses is still Indonesia. Next, I just want to show a little bit what we've done for these past 2 years. We are end-to-end solution for talent management that aim to foster the youth to be market and future ready by providing development, supply, and management services. Next slide. So, the main problem that we want to solve is high rate of employee skill mismatch that up to 63% because the gap between education and working field is very huge. We have these services that integrated into digital system. So next, these are overview of our latest program. There are any pesantren coding. Next, startup weekend. Next, then student company, then any Zil holiday series, and etc. So there is some of our achievement this year. We also get 7 awards in international and events and competitions. And this is our team. Our Ridho Putra is marketing student in UIB also, and Bill Delvin is IT students in UIB. Then I think Indonesian millennials could contribute with their own innovative ways to support the SDG Goal 8. Next, with even the world's less developed countries currently having rapid growth in technology adoption, there is a little reason digitalization cannot become a friend of rather than a threat to the advancement of global sustainable development. Thank you. So here's my presentations about what I've done and also why I'm so concerned with youth and development of the human resources quality. And for the Q&A session, as young people, what can we do to make all goal SDG successes? Okay, because the dominance of Indonesia, so in Indonesia itself, the youths are the productive ages is dominance 1.4 population of Indonesia population is youth. Then what we can do today, the youth remain a key strength and cornerstone of Indonesia development because the demographic eventually dominate the populations and estimated to reach a peak around 2030 to 2040 when the number of productive national ages 15 to 64 will outnumber the non-working population. So what we can do as a youth, I think we could contribute our youth potential for the nation because we have a very skilled and also contributing significantly because we have education, we have equality, character building to become future leaders. And I think what youth can contribute more is about we can build community and skills who are able to eventually make a positive impact in where they live and work. Also, we can promoting the education, like we can improving our quality of standard of people. Then while we entering to the work field, we could match with what industry needs. So what can we do right now? We can improve ourselves in what passions or skill we can in-depth learning. Then we can start it to be equally. Then can you tell me about creative class or Indonesian we call as economic creative? So economic creative is one of important things, and also I think interesting things from Indonesia is from Wisnutama, our ministry, said that in 2020 also, because of pandemic, there are a lot of creative class that we could access digitally and also free, and it was very interesting because we could reach all of over the creative class and over the world, and it is borderless. And creative class here we focus in digital literacy class, and also why we focus in digital innovation, all our SMEs and also digital startup now, digital business is built and also born with the digital value for the interesting ahead. Because when we talk about creative class, this is one of part we could improving the quality of the human resources, especially for the youth. And creative class here, what I've done in Indonesia also, we provide the online and offline class that focus in IT, design and marketing. Why that field? Because this is demanding job in this pandemic, and this pandemic season, this pandemic season make the work environmental change differently, because all will digitalize in system and all become borderless because we use technology. So in economic creative, we want to improve the economic growth with digital talent and also digital innovation and problem solver for Indonesia economy condition right now. I think that's all for me and what I can share for today. For the time, I really thank you for everyone. Thank you.
Vidya Prakash, uh, uh, he's pursuing law, LB Hons, 3 years program from Law College Utrancha University. She was also graduated from BTech Industrial and Production Engineering from Dehradun Institute of Technologies. So the time is yours, Mr. Vidya Prakash.
Yes, I am audible. Hello.
Right?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I am audible.
Yeah, please. The time is yours. Good morning.
Good morning, all of you and all the participants. I am highly privileged to be here to discuss the Sustainable Development Goals and its progress report. Uh, I can share my slide. Sustainable Development Goals, and I will like to present the goal 9. It's talk about the industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Next slide. Then next one is the logo of the nation. Then first of all, we talk about what are the sustainable development goals. The sustainable development goals are known as the global goals, were adopted by all United Nations members states in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty and protect the planet and ensure that all peoples enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. The 17 SDGs are integrated, that is, they recognize that action in one area which affect outcomes in others, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Then next one is UNDP main role is the UNDP rules. As the lead United Nations Development Agency, UNDP is a well placed to help implement the goals through our work in some 170 countries and territories. We support countries in achieving the SDGs through integrated solution. Today's complex changes from stemming the spread of diseases to preventing conflict cannot be tackled neatly in isolation. For UNDP, this means focusing on systems, root causes, and connections between challenges, not just a thematic sector, to build solutions that respond to people's daily realities. Our track record working across the goals provides us with a valuable experiences and proven policy experts to ensure we all reach the target set as the SDGs by 2030. And there are the 17 targets. Achieving these SDGs require the partnership of the government, private sector, civil society and citizen alike to make sure we live a better planet for future generation. Come to the next one, please. I would like to talk about the goal 9 of the SDG. The goal 9 is talks about the industry, innovation and infrastructure. Investment in infrastructure and innovations are crucially drivers of economic growth and development, with over half the world population now living in cities. Mass transport and renewable energies are becoming ever more important, as are the growth of new industry and information and communication technology. The technological process is also key to finding lasting solutions to both economic and environmental changes, such as providing new jobs and promoting energy efficiency, promoting sustainable industry. And in some of the facts and figures we talk about through the goal 9, 2.3 billions, the worldwide 2.3 billion people lack access to basic sanitations. 40% in some low-income African countries. If infrastructure constraints cut businesses productivity by about around 40%, 2.6 billion people in developing countries do not have access to constant electricity, and 90% more than 4 billion people still do not have access to internet. 90% of them are in the developing countries. 2.3 million, the renewable energy sector currently employ more than 2.3 million people. The number could reach 20 million by 2030. And 30% in developing countries, barely 30% of agriculture products undergo industrial processing, compared to 90% highly income countries. Digital sprints, new and faster ways of creating ideas. This year, in 2019-20 and 2021, we introduced a developing process to test a new way of the working on the digital initiatives. We assembled 6 teams in several bureaus and countries. They came up with the 6 different projects, digital sprints that use technology to help UNDP become a more efficient organizations and solve complex development challenges. The team were brought together to our partners FEEY Web's Space, which is designed to promote collaborations, explorations and creativity. But the most important component wasn't the inviting design configurations or latest gadgets and apps which help the process run more smoothly. What made the real differences are the people who guided the teams through a 5-day brainstorming sessions, mentors who offered their technical experts in data science, blockchain and other tech solutions to help explore the full potential of ideas, and the teams themselves who enthusiastically threw themselves into a new environment. During the week, colleagues worked agreeing on what their minimum valuable products, minimum features required to validate a product idea early on would like. Our day 4 senior UNDP leadership came to hear that, pitch their concept and ask questions. The brainstorming week ended with the panel discussion and final hours to refine the concept based on the feedback received the previous day. The most important is the industry in through the goal 19 is the 5 plans for the carbon neutrality. Since the industrial revolution, technology has boosted the development of our society in ways we never seen before. We tackled some of the biggest challenges of our era, the production of food and the eradication of the diseases and the expansion of transport and communication systems. But this form of the development has come at the cost and has become perhaps the greatest threat of our time. The combustion of fossils like petrol, coal, and gas that fueled the production has released millions of tons of carbon gases to the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases emissions are in the part reabsorbed by the oceans and forests, but their drastic increase over the past 50 years combined with the deforestation with unsustainable agriculture has caused a global warming effect. The average earth temperature is 1 degree Celsius warmer than it was before the industrial revolution. COVID-19 pandemic has shifted priorities of the health system also, and which is finding itself not only overwhelmed but also with restricted capacity to provide service. It has been hitherto extending to communities. Logistic and supplies are disrupted, especially of the material and equipment that were imported till date. API of the essential drugs, personal protective equipment to adversely affecting the services. Hospitals and health facility overwhelmed with the COVID-19 patients are making it difficult for other patients with acute or chronic ailments to access standard care. The national authority have to plan for challenges related to health of its population concurrent with combating COVID-19 pandemic. Critical areas which may be given priority should address the needs of children, women, elderly with NCDs and other with special needs. The vulnerable should not be allowed to become more vulnerable, and children, women, and elderly are most vulnerable groups even in the peacetime. The gains of the MDGs and SDG stand to be negated unless the service for these groups are sustained. And in our country, India had played an important role in shaping the SDGs. As such, India has been effectively committed to achieving the SDGs even before they were formally crystallized. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi has stated, these goals reflect our involving outstanding of the social, economic, and environmental linkage that define our lives. India's developing mantra, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, collective effort. It means the collective effort, inclusive development, and the associated national programs closely track to the SDGs. The SDG addresses the root cause of the poverty and and are an elaborate exercise to help nations work towards a unifying agenda for development. India's statistically system and institutions gather data and report on defined parameters in various sectors. National SDG indicators are being currently constructed to being better capture and context of India and its need. Along with the development of the national SDG indicator, the statistical system is also geared to measure achievement at sub-national levels. The goals of the SDGs has been agreed upon the HLPF as focus area for this year. Niti Aayog continues to uphold its commitment to achieving the SDG in the timely manner and also communication process both formally and informally. And rest of us, that's.
My name is Osei Enoch from Ghana, studying System Information in Universitas International Batam. I'm very much grateful to be invited as a speaker in this great seminar once again. Today I will be talking about reduced inequality, which is the goal 10. Which is the goal 10. Now, we should all know that all the 17 goals of the SDG are programs that have existed for many years, and inequality happens to be one of them. What is inequality? Inequality means unequal treatment given to people. Please move to the, I'm not yet to this one. Yeah, okay, thank you. So inequality means unequal treatment given to people or unequal distribution of resources. Inequality happens because of power. Some people are in power, so they are treated differently. Others are treated differently because of their age, their gender, ethnicity, and others. So there is inequality in the labor market, inequality when it comes to education, healthcare, freedom of speech, and others. This goal covers all the forms of inequality. As we know, the goal 5 talks about gender equality, and this inequality is general, covering all. So it means that gender inequality can also be mentioned as part of this goal. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the goal 10, which is reduce inequality, goal 10 is about reduce inequality within and among countries. It has 10 targets to be achieved by the year 2030. The targets include reduce income inequality, promote universal social, economic, and political inclusion, ensure equal opportunities, and end discrimination, adopt fiscal and social policies that promote equality, improve regulation of global financial markets and institutions, enhance representation for developing countries in financial institutions, responsible and well-managed migration policies, special different treatment for developing countries, encourage development assistance and investment in least developed countries, and reduce transaction costs for migrant remittances. Next. So income inequality is one of the major problems of inequality in the world, and it continues to rise even though some people saw their income to increase, but we still have income inequality. Okay. Now, in many of the countries, they don't even have data to analyze inequality. In sub-Saharan Africa, now when we talk about Africa, Africa is the continent with the largest number of countries, which is 54. Talking about sub-Saharan Africa, there are countries that are south of the Sahara Desert, and they are 46 in number. And this one is stating that only 13 of the 46 countries in the sub-Saharan Africa had data on income growth. Now, I sought for information from different researches done by many organizations to see the inequality in some of the continents. So let's look at inequality in Africa. This is a research which was conducted by the World Inequality Lab, and they analyzed data from 1990 to 2017. The report of the research states that Africa stands out as an extreme income inequality region by international standards, with a top 10% national income share of 54% and a bottom 50% share below 10%. Africa has the highest gap between average incomes of the 10% and income of the bottom 50%. Average incomes of the top 10% are about 30% higher than those of the bottom 50%. These are above the values found in the extreme inequality regions such as the Middle East, India, and Brazil. Again, the report states that on average, income gaps are highest in the Southern Africa and Central Africa and lowest in the Northern Africa. Again, since the years 1990, several countries located at the middle of the African ladder of national income per capita such as Nigeria, Morocco, Ghana, Angola, Tunisia, Namibia or Lesotho saw their average income increase significantly. On the other hand, the average incomes of the Africa's richest countries like Algeria, South Africa, and Libya stagnated in the years 1990 and increased moderately in the years 2000. However, the poorest countries did not experience any increase in average income. This is why assuming perfect equality within countries, the top 10% share decreased more than the bottom 50% increase. So this is what the research conducted by the World Inequality Lab is saying about inequality in Africa. If that is the case, what is Africa doing? Now, all the countries in Africa, many of the countries in Africa are campaigning for free education so that everybody will have access to education. As I'm talking to you now, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and other countries have free education from elementary up to senior high, and this has increased the number of enrollment in the schools. As I know, in Ghana they go in batches. If this batch goes to school in maybe for about 3 months, then they will have holidays for the other batch to also be in schools. And one good thing about this is that in the African countries, the number of public schools are more than the number of private schools. So it means that many people will have access to education. And one of the problems that existed was that because some of the parents could not afford the fees for their children in school, they only send their male ones, the sons, to school, and the daughters will remain in the house. And this is a great discrimination based on gender. Now let's look at another report of the research conducted by Asian Development Bank Institute. This is the research was about inequality in Asia. It states that inequality for the Asian region as a whole grew significantly, rising about almost 42% in around 2 decades. That is from the middle 1990s to 2008, which is measured by the TAO index. Then 18 of the 32 Asian economies now have Gini coefficient of gross income equal to or greater than 40. We will come to the measurement of inequality using the Gini coefficient. So you should note the values that I'm mentioning now. Based on the net income, only 10 economies have Gini coefficient above 40, suggesting that taxes and transfers moderate the income gap. Again, although the Gini coefficient in developing Asia are on average lower than sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, the growth rate of inequality has surpassed these regions. To move on, in terms of inequality trends, 16 of the 32 Asian economies exhibited an increase in Gini coefficient in the past 2 decades, covering 80% of Asia's population. In particular, China and India, with the largest populations in the world, have the highest Gini coefficient of about 0.5. Now, what is Asia doing? In Asia, many of the countries are engaging in scholarship programs. For example, we have the Chinese government scholarship, we have the Japanese government scholarship, Indonesian government, Korean government, and other countries. And this is what they do. Many of them target some of the poor areas. So some of the scholarships are reserved for Africans, some of them are reserved for only ladies or women, because their strength is low when it comes to education. They don't have the means to be educated. Now let's look at the last research, which was conducted by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. This is an association of 37 members, which most of the European countries and American countries, as well as Asian countries, are joining. Their report says that the average income of the richest 10% of the population is about 9 times that of the poorest 10% across the OECD countries, up from 7 times 25 years ago. Only in Turkey, Chile, or Mexico has fallen inequality, but in the latter two countries, the incomes of the richest are still more than 25 times those of the poorest population. They also have some figures on gender inequality. They state that breaking down barriers to gender equality in education, employment, and entrepreneurship would create source of income growth. Greater education attainment has counted for about half of the economic growth in the OECD countries in the past 50 years. Again, companies with higher proportion of women in top management do better than others. So it means that women also have the strength to improve the economy. But in the OECD countries, women earn 16% less than men, and female top earners are paid 25% less than the male counterparts. Women occupy less than a fifth of the parliamentary seats. So if you go to the parliament, the number of women in the various countries is low. So around the world, and access to top positions in companies is even worse. Due to this, many women still retire on lower pensions and see their final years in poverty. It says that living an average 6 years longer than men, women over 65 are today more than 1.5 times more likely to live in poverty than in men in the same brackets. So these are some of the figures and reports I got from some of the researches conducted by the organizations. So as we know, we have 7 continents in the world, but I only read about Africa, Asia, and the OECD countries, which cover Europe, America, and some part of the Asian countries. Next, please. The next page, please. Okay, so let's come to forms of inequality. Inequality exists in many forms, such as economic inequality, as I'm talking about. In economic inequality, we have some people with high wages than others. We have another form of inequality, which is gender inequality. Then disability, race, social inequality. When it comes to social inequality, talking about the facilities that we have, like schools, hospitals, and others, the good schools or the good universities are all in the cities. So if you go to the villages, they don't have good access to hospital, healthcare, or education. But this is the fact that during the final exam, they are all going to write the same questions. So it means that those in the cities will perform well, and those in the villages will still perform poorly. Okay. Next, please. Now let's come to measurement of inequality. The Gini index, which was produced or developed by Corrado Gini, an Italian, in 2012, is a tool that is used to measure inequality. What is Gini index? Gini index is the measure of distribution of incomes across the population. Now, the coefficient of the Gini index ranges from 0, that is 0%, to 1, that is 100%, with 0 representing perfect equality and 1 representing perfect inequality. Okay, so if you look at this Gini index, it means that as the values move from 0, then it shows an increase in inequality. Okay, next please. Now let's come to impact of COVID-19 on Goal 10. One thing that we should know is that even before COVID-19, the world was off track to fulfill the SDGs. Many countries did not have the data to analyze the goals, the 17 goals in their countries. And now COVID-19 is also bringing many programs. Okay, so COVID-19 has touched all segments of the population. Every person is affected from COVID-19, and all sectors of the economy. So it's the sectors of the economy, that is we have the primary sector that produces the raw materials to feed the industries. We have the secondary sector that turn the raw materials into finished goods, and the tertiary sector of the economy that offer services. All these sectors are affected by COVID-19, and also all regions of the world. Every country in the world is affected by corona. Okay, now the pandemic threatens to reverse years of progress on poverty, hunger, healthcare, and education. So it means that the progress that has been made over the years are going to be reversed. We are going to go back because of the COVID-19. Okay, so now COVID-19 has kept 90% of students out of school. So if you go to, even if you come here, like in Indonesia, many of the schools, like in the universities and in the senior high, they are using Zoom and Teams to teach. But if you go to other countries, because they have poor network, or because they are in the villages, they cannot use the Zoom, or they cannot use the internet to learn. So they have to be in their homes. They don't go to school. Okay, so, and many of many of the businesses and factories are shutting down because they cannot stay in business. They have to save their businesses by shutting down. So it means that production is going down. Why? Because the primary sector, which produce the raw materials, uh, is not working again. So they don't get the raw materials to produce the goods. And even market is about demand and supply. So if they continue to supply the goods, or if they continue to produce, the demand is not there because people stay in their houses, they don't go out. So if they continue to produce the goods, they will get they will lose because the demand is not there. So if they continue to produce, there will be disequilibrium in the market. Okay. So it is expected that 71 million people will go back to extreme poverty, and 130 people will suffer from undernourishment in 2030. Next, please. Okay, so unemployment is increasing because of COVID-19, and due to we have one kind of unemployment that is going on now. We have under unemployment. With under unemployment, you may think that the person is working, but it is a kind of unemployment whereby the labor force are giving their services, but they get less payment. And all these are happening because of the COVID-19, because the businesses don't get the amount that they used to get, so they have to reduce the payments that they give to their workers. Okay, so and other people don't go to the health facilities to seek for health services. This is because many people fear to go to the hospitals because they think other people will tag them with the assumption that they have COVID-19. So many people will have headache and still be in the house because they fear that they will be diagnosed. The results may end up to say that they have COVID-19, and this is happening because like there are some people they go to check for the COVID-19, even though they don't have COVID-19, but they get reactive result, and they end up to be quarantined. Then after the swab test, it proves that they don't have any COVID-19. So because of these fears, many people don't go to hospital. So it is expected that maternal deaths are going to increase. Now, the UN is saying that 70 countries reported to severe disruption or total suspension of childhood vaccination services during March and April 2020. So because they are not giving the childhood vaccination against the 6 killer diseases, the 6 killer diseases are measles, poliovirus, whooping cough, and other diseases. Because they did not give these vaccinations, many children are going to suffer from these diseases, which will increase the death in children. Now, gender inequality against women is going to also increase due to the impact of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osei, for your great presentation. So the next speaker is Miss. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the questions. Yeah.
Some questions for you. Okay, please answer, please.
Okay. Okay, so the first question is saying that as young people, what can we do to make the SDGs success? Now, everybody believes that the youth or the young people are the future leaders. So, what can we do to make the SDGs work? Because we are the future leaders, what I would say is that we should all come together, we should read wide. Here is the case that many students read only when they have exam, or they only read around their program. But I'm suggesting that we should all read around the program and also read outside the program, so that we will have much knowledge in order to work together to improve or to make the SDGs work in our various countries. Then the next one is income inequality requires global solution. What do what are the things that we can do? Yeah. Okay. So with this question, because the SDGs or inequality is a global problem, what I would say is that all the countries should come together, share ideas, share resources in order to fight inequality. Then is gender equality, does gender inequality have a relevance with goal 10? Yes, because I said earlier that we have goal 5 for only gender equality, but the goal 10, which is reduce inequality, is a general inequality that we are talking about. So goal 10 covers all forms of inequality. So gender inequality can be mentioned as part of goal 10. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear my voice?
Very clear.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Kelfia Limanda. Currently, I'm studying at university in Batam International University. And my faculty is computer science. I'm majoring at information system, and I'm now at my 3rd year of studying. So today I'm going to present and talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, the 10th goal about reducing inequalities, especially in female gaming. Okay, what do you guys think when I'm talking about gamers? Yeah, I think you guys must be thinking that a gamers must be a boys, a male, that have no life, that are playing games all day long from the morning till the night, or even there are some gamers are playing and joining esport competition and etc. But first, I'm going to talk about video games, and I'm sure you guys knows about video games. It is a really common. Most kids, teenagers, or even adults play these games, and yeah, some of them are playing games for earning for jobs, and they are for from this. Some of people are also play games to have fun, to play with friends, or even like I have mentioned before, to get money. That's how we call them streamers. Streamers are usually stream themselves playing games in the by some platform, because there are some platform that gamers can stream themselves, but and not a little that some female are also stream themselves, that we call female gamer or female streamer. Yeah, next. What's about female gamers? If you hear about female gamers, what's on your mind? Is she new, unhelpful, or even taking advantage for being woman? Because sometimes when female play games, they already people already label them that they are unhelpful, they are incapable, they cannot excel in a game field, and even some boys, some male are taking advantage of a woman gender by pretending to be woman to get some advantage, because as we know, if women are playing games, sometimes male is more interesting, and then sometimes they are giving more gifts, so that so many boys are taking advantage by that. Yeah, me myself think because of that, the reputation of female gamer are very bad because of that, and that because of that also people look down on female. Yeah, the next things I would like to share is there's an example female gamers that are professional players. She is Sasha Hostin. Her nickname is Scarlett. She's a Canadian female gamer that is officially the highest paid female pro player in the world. Yeah, and also she is very good and have been achieved many achievements and following many competition, or even is she have been won it. Here's some clip about Sasha Hostin where when she is playing and joining the competition. She even have beat many male gamers there. Okay, let's see them together.
You can share the sound, Kelfia.
Okay, sorry, let me reshare it. Can you see my screen? Okay, sorry.
Circling.
Okay, great. Sound is on.
Going at this next is it. Beijing. Scarlett is the IM Pyeongchang 2018 champion.
Right from the get-go, Scarlett was extremely impressive, and I was really taken aback by how good she was.
She can beat few good players in here, probably like maybe even reach the finals if she's lucky enough.
I think one of the real strengths of Scarlett is that she is unpredictable, but she is very solid across the board.
She's going to have to beat Cyril, she's going to have to beat Zest if she wants to win, and then the finals would probably be against SOS. And that's a tough road, but Scarlett definitely has the skill to be able to do it. It's just, will she deliver her top quality games?
Antari's a pretty good position, but with these great lightning clouds, those tanks are basically made useless for the time being. Harpooning one of the tanks into the army, and a great victorious fight there by Scarlett.
She's just diving straight in, absolutely no fear. The corrosive biles landing off the defensive player's army. The drones desperately being formed, but they are workers. They're not made for battle. They're all falling. Scarlett takes the 3-1 victory.
You can never predict exactly what SOS's chances are. It's what he brings to the table on the day.
If she can take it in the scaleway, that is huge. It goes down, and that means that this app should be picked up as well. More circlings dropped off into the main base. GG! Oh, SOS, if only he could stabilize, but Scarlett has kept this aggression up. Circling's going at this Nexus, and that is it! GG! Scarlett is the IM Pyeongchang 2018 champion!
Okay, there you go. You saw that she played really, really well, and even so much more better than the male player. That's why we should admit that gender don't relate when it comes to skills. So the next thing that I'm going to talk is about the depiction, about how female were designed in video game, especially on the costume, animation, and voice. Yeah, female character in video games especially on the costume, are commonly being over-sexualized because the way they were designed. In the character model, animation, and voice actor, because that the way that games company want to attract or get more attention for male player. So here's an example of a character from King of Fighter. Yeah, she's Mai. This is a fighting games where there's a lot of character inside. And why I choose this character, because I think she is the most popular one, and her design is kind of vulgar and usually get over sexualized. This is unfair because of her clothes design that attract a lot of male player. This is such not a good design for me, and I think they can design it more better. And here I have another example that's not overly over sexualized, that the design. She is Princess Zelda, the Princess Zelda from the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild game. Her design is really beautiful and really family friendly. This should be an example to reducing the injustice depiction in video games. After all of this presentation I'm talking about, we are coming to the conclusion. In this time around, we should think more about gender equality and respect more of female figure in general, so that we can reduce the inequality and the injustice of female figure. Thank you.
We shall have a question and answer, please.
Okay, we're coming to the question and answer part. So the first question is, as young people, what can we do to make SDGs success? Because I'm now talking about the reducing inequalities area, so I'm going to tell you guys about how young people should do or can do to make it success for the 10th goal. Well, for this question, a youngster, myself is still a youngster too, so I have some advice, or what we can do to reduce the inequalities is by to learn to accept each other. We have to learn not to differentiate people by any kind of reason, starting from we are still kids, and by not being racist is the easiest way. So we have to learn not to be racist, because from the small environment, from family, we have to learn it, and from and when we are at school, we have to have friends and learn to be friends with each other, being friendly, not choosing friend, and have to be, we have to accept each other. For the second question, ICTs have the potential to help reduce inequality both within and between countries by enabling access to information and knowledge to disadvantaged segments of society. Can you explain more about it? Sure. For the ICT part, we know that nowadays ICT is not a new thing, that every people know about the ICT. It's about the technology and communication. By talking more about it, everyone will be getting the information, and from ICT we can share more, and people all around the world can get the information about the SDGs and about the inequalities themselves. And from ICT, people can also create many things. For example, for the multimedia people, they can create the videos, they can create an animation. For a programmer, they can create a website to share about the gender equality, so that people can aware more about these issues. That's all about my answer. Thank you for the opportunities, and see you next time.
Hello everyone, good day. Today I will present about Goal 9 in Industries, Innovation and Infrastructure. And thank you for the opportunity given to me in this international webinar series. Okay, next. As we know that the world now is rapidly changing, creating new opportunities and bringing along new issues that require attention. We live in a very complex era where with change and progress happening daily, and how we choose to act today will be a cornerstone in the planet that future generations will inherit from us. In order to address the situation we find ourselves in, the United Nations has endeavored to set adequate goals for the near future. And today, as we know, we all talk about the SDGs goals, and now I will talk about Goal 9, Industries, Innovation and Infrastructure. So, Industry 4.0 refers to the rapid spread of digital technology applications such as big data, Internet of Things, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence into all areas of manufacturing. But what is the correlation between SDGs and Industry 4.0? Industry 4.0 has the potential to produce innovative solutions to global issues. The SDGs can provide guidance in realizing this potential. Okay, next. With rising economic growth, manufacturing industries are booming, so are new industries supporting innovation, information, and communication technologies. The benefits come in the form of promotion sustainable industries, investment in R&D, and motivation and opportunity for entrepreneurship. If we talk about Industrial 4.0, we will also think about the new technology called Internet of Things. So now, most of the manufacturers and industry nowadays are already using the IoT technology. As we see in the picture, in the smart industry, we all now use the automation by using the devices, and then it will also help improving the productivity, energy efficiency, and even more manufacturing jobs. Okay, next. Another example of Internet of Things is the smart city, smart home, and smart infrastructure. As we can see in the picture, that a lot of things that happen if we use the smart city program. As we know that in Jakarta and in Bandung now, those cities are developing their smart city program, and the IoT of smart city, they help to build the smarter infrastructure for the citizens. Like for the example, if we see on the road now that they have a lot of CCTV surveillance, and also you can track your direction through the map, like from using the Google Maps, so we will know where is the obstacles or the traffic on the road. And also if we have experience in Indonesia before in 2018, as you know that we had this pollution from the illegal logging, that we have this on the screen on the cities, big cities, where we can see how is our weather, how is our air situation with that kind of sensor. And next, another example of innovation of Internet of Things is the smart agriculture and smart health. So if you see now in the left picture about the smart agriculture, that all the work is done by drones and by the technologies. You just have to have the sensor in each machine and water sensor, so then it can, you know, do the work by itself, and we, the people, will be just monitoring from far. And also in health, smart health, now that we have this kind of device, smart devices like the smartwatch or application in our phone that can track our health condition, and the data will be sent to the cloud, then that will be received by the healthcare, like the doctor and the nurses, to analyze our health. Okay. Next. The conclusion that now the world has changed and we cannot go back to the times of yesterday. The revolution is essentially changing our way of living and working, and emphasizes the need for collaborative action for dealing with complex issues. Technological progress of Industry 4.0 can turn out to be the best or the worst thing that happened to our civilization, and that depends on how we act today. If the majority becomes aware of seriousness of side effects that our way of life has caused in the last few centuries, if the majority realize that immediate action coupled with international cooperation is needed, the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution will bring us to environmentally sound, healthy, and peaceful future. That's all my presentation today. Thank you.
Okay, we shall forward to question and answers for Miss. Okay, please, time is yours.
Okay, the first question is it IoT have the connection of or impact to reach SDGs goals? Yes, I think so, because now that technology is developing with a lot of like easiness of using the technology, then of course it can help to reach SDGs goal. How to reach an ideal proportion of households with broadband internet access by urban or rural as a way to reach goal 9. Now that we know that our Ministry of Information and Communication work harder to be able to reach the rural area, the technology that is used now is using the satellite. So they build towers to the rural area, and then we can use the satellite to giving the internet access to people there. Some people think that SDGs is ambiguous agenda because it has broad goal. Is progress possible? Yeah, SDGs have broad goals from 1 to 17. I agree to that, but those goals are related to one another, and yeah, I think it is possible to achieve the goals by 2030 with the help of the world leader and the people itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation by Miss Dwinta. Okay, for the next, okay, due to time difference that we have technical difficulties connecting to Mr. From Cameroon, our speaker from Cameroon. So we shall
Hello everyone, I'm so honored to participate in this program. Now I'm going to present you the 17 goal partnership for the goal. Contents: my CV, partnership for the goal. Targets: I'm Ousmane Bello. I'm a student for the University of the Marwa, Faculty of Economics and Management, Accounting and Finance Department, High Teachers Training College, Department of Computer Science. Partnership for the Goal: strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the Goal Partnership for Sustainable Development. The global goal can only be met if we work together. International investments and effort is needed to ensure technological development, fair trade, and make access, especially for development countries. To build a better world, we need to be supportive, empathetic, attentive, passionate, and above all, cooperative. Target: everyone can help to make sure that we meet the global goal. Use these 19 targets to create action for partnership for goal. We have 1. Mobilize resources to improve domestic revenue collection. 2. Implement all development assistance commitment. 3. Mobilize financial resources for developing countries. 4. Assistance developing countries in attaining debt sustainability. 5. Invest in least developed countries. Knowledge sharing and cooperation for access to science, technology, and innovation. Promote sustainable technologies to developing countries. Strengthen the science, technology, and innovation capacity for least developed countries. Change SDG capacity in developing countries. Promote universal trading system on the WTO. Increase the export of developing countries. Remove trade barriers for least developed countries. Change global macroeconomic stability. Exchange policy coherence for sustainable development. Respect national leadership to implement policies for the sustainable development goal. Exchange the global partnership for sustainable development. Encourage effective partnership. Exchange availability for reliable data. Further develop measurement for progress. I am ending to ask How this 17th goal can help Cameroonians. We can summarize this by saying Cameroonian leaders must strengthen their partnership with national and international organizations in order to succeed in the objective for emergence 2035. Thank you for kind attention. Okay. Question number 1. As young people, what can we do to make SDGs success? As young people, we need to focus on the ultimate goal of sustainable development is to improve the quality of life within the community in a way that supports the concept of sustainability. It works to remove barriers that prevent people from meeting their needs so that we can better meet our needs, and it works to improve infrastructure systems so that we can meet our needs more efficiently. It takes both human development and technological development to achieve this. Question 2. How to empower and extend the partnership in the new normal life. To strengthen and empower the partnership in normal life, each country and its leader must be able to make efforts to start national and international organizations sharing common objectives and living together and fulfilling these 3 points. Crisis communication is key. Successfully manage and enable essential workers. Keep our workforce engaged. Question 3. What the strategy must be adopted during the pandemic situation through a partnership to achieve the SDGs goals? The strategy adopted during the pandemic is to start and forge good partnership with countries which have an important advance in medicine and which are researching how to eradicate this pandemic, and this will allow to benefit from the discovered remedies and other. Thank you.
We will play videos from the Faculty of Law. Okay, please.
So we have from Master of Law, we have plenty of activities which involve professors, lecturers, and also students to have experience in international atmospheres. So we have activity for students. For example, we bring our students to Korea, and then we ask the students to present the papers and sharing to others, professors and students in Korea. That's in Yongsan University, because Master of Law has collaboration. We have an MOU with Yongsan University in Korea. And as for professors, usually we have international conferences. We went to Harvard University, Oxford University, Cambridge University, Russia, Dubai University, and many others. We've been traveling actually quite a lot in different parts of the world to present our paper, our research paper, and also to connect with other professors and others institutions overseas, because we believe that we would like to have more network with other foreign universities and also institutions. So it's part of the program of Master of Law, because not only for professors or lecturers, but also for the students to have international experiences overseas. But because of the 19 pandemic, this is the COVID-19 pandemic, so we cannot bring our students to Korea, even the South Korea, our partner, or even a different part of the world also inquire when can we have the face-to-face meeting or conference like that. But because of the pandemic, so it's or it's almost impossible to do that offline. So this is also the idea why we do it international webinar online, because we give the opportunities to professors, not only for professors from law faculty, but also other professors from different faculty and students. As you see today, we have students from different departments. They're not from law, because SDGs is quite broad topic to discuss, and there are many angles that we can touch and we can really discuss about it. So that's the program that Master of Law students do, and also the professors do, in order to try to realize the term international in our vision. So next time we are going to conduct others activities, not only via seminars, but we also do publications. We have a joint publications with professors from different parts of the world, and we also encourage students who are, hopefully that some of those who are here joining us today also from overseas and would like to have a collaborative research. We are open for that, not only for our professors but also for students. So students and professors, they can join together, and then we publish together in various peer-reviewed journals, internationally, of course, international publications. In addition to teaching and conducting research, we also have what we call the community services, because as the education institution in Indonesia, we have to carry out 3 pillars: education, research, and community services. So the community services for Master of Law students, we have one of the village that we focus on and try to incorporate what we have studied at the university, and then it's based on the SDGs parameters that we use, and then we implement it actually to that small village. And then one of the obstacles that we found that is quite a problem for the village once. It was about the water and sanitation, and alhamdulillah we got a sponsor from Australian government under the direct program, aid program, and gave us donation, and also from the students and alumni of Master of Law students. So we have that funds to give to the community drill well. So we call the professional to dig up the ground, and then in order to find the water resource. So that's actually we try to realize goal 6, because goal 6 of the SDGs is about clean water and sanitation. So most of the international activities that we do, besides to fulfill the 3 pillars of the higher education, we also try to give contributions to realize the SDGs at the local level. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you, and hopefully, those who are listening today would like to participate also in our program. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Pa Hendy, and I hand it over to you.
So we shall close this live webinar. Thank you very much for your kind attention for the all participants. So next we shall give the time to our head of Master of Law program, Miss Rina, for the closing speech, please.
Thank you very much, Pak Hendy. Okay, I would like to thank all presenters from China, Ghana, and Indonesia. Sorry about Cameroon because there's a technical problem, but inshallah he's going to video himself, I think, and record it, and then so we can integrate it to our YouTube. So if you want to watch the whole goals from, you can access to the YouTube. Again, I thank all the presenters for their remarkable and interesting presentations. Before ending this closing speech, I would like to conclude that the essence of webinar series number 1 to number 5 by stating that achievement and realization of the SDGs are our responsibilities as civil society. We can make contribution, no matter how small it is. It will make a big change to our community and the world. One of the humble actions for the achievement of the SDGs is contributed by the Master of Law program, Universitas Internasional Batam, by offering a course named Democracy and Human Rights. It discusses and analyzes issues and challenges of human rights at local, national, and international level, and attempts to find solutions by using the SDGs as the parameters and success indicators. It does not merely focus on the theoretical and conceptual approaches, but it provides opportunities to students to conduct concrete actions by applying their knowledge to resolve the problems to support the achievement of the SDGs at the local level. I hope more and more higher education institutions offer courses in which the central discussion is the achievement of the SDGs. Prior to ending my closing remarks, I would like to thank all speakers for their interesting discussion. I also thank the Master of Ceremony, IT team who works behind the screen to ensure that no troubles occurring during this webinar. Last but not least, all participants who are still joining this webinar until the end. Thank you so much. Stay safe, healthy, and happy.